There we go. So good afternoon, Catherine, and thank you for taking time today for this Zoom interview. It's lovely to reconnect, even if we're doing it over technology. I did see you the other day at a live seasonal lunch, so that was nice, and reminded me that I should be gathering some of your insights. I'm in the process of interviewing women who are influential, powerful women who have great wisdom to share, and particularly those who I feel have information to share around the topic specifically of confidence. So for those of you who haven't met Catherine, a little bit of a formal intro, and then I'll let you talk a little bit more about the highlights for yourself. So Catherine I met many, many years ago working in the human resources field when we were both actually working in the arena of recruitment. Catherine has been the successful owner of a recruitment staffing agency for many, many years, and the president and CEO of CBI. So we both have a number of years of experience. It says 30 years, over 30 years of experience on your website. Executive search, development, networking, and you have a massive network. And I believe that communications is a key piece of our confidence, knowing that we have the resources in place and the connections to be able to make things happen. So welcome, Catherine. I've only given a short piece of your bio. I'm sure there's lots more. So maybe you could share a little bit more about some of the highlights that have brought you to this point in your career.
Highlights, that's a good question. It actually starts with my mom and dad. I had really great mentors in them, and watching them, how hard they worked and how dedicated they were to ensuring whatever success that they were after to obviously support us kids, our family. And it wasn't an easy life. It was a farming life, and there was a lot of other complications that happened. So watching them was just part of who they were and who we became as sisters as well.
And you have a number of siblings?
We have two younger sisters.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did you get started with Prominent Personnel?
Well, I was in oil and gas sales for 10 years before I started Prominent, and fortunately, I moved around a lot, fortunately and unfortunately, depending on how you look at it back then. But every time I moved, I ended up with a new client list. So had a pretty large network by the time 1998 rolled around, when I wanted to start my own business. I wasn't sure what it was that I wanted to do, but during a sales capacity, I was already placing people by referring them back and forth to different organizations. So I met with a few of the search firms, and fortunately I had a really great mentor who was very good to me at the very beginning. His name was Michael Honey, and he was one of the guys in town that was very highly regarded. He was certainly one of the best executive search firms in the world under O'Callaghan Honey, and then of course was bought out by Korn Ferry later. He helped me tremendously. He gave me guidance on what to do, what not to do, be very cautious about some of the areas to stay away from, and the best practices, I guess, to be considered one of the very best search firms that they were, and I wanted to model some of that. And in fact, he also helped me with understanding the differences between retainer and contingency, and early on realized that contingency was where I wanted to be best at. We work very hard as a team, and it doesn't matter what day of the week it is or what part of the year we're in, it's all the same to us. We absolutely love the business, and I've unfortunately been very blessed with some really great recruiters, some great business development people that help us with the turning of the machine.
So for those watching this video who aren't familiar with the recruitment industry, when you talk about contingency, can you just share what that includes?
Sure. So contingency meaning they can look through their own network. They can, while we've got the search, they can give us, let's say it's an executive assistant search, they can talk to all of their team members to ensure that they've got the full access to that network as well, alongside while we're looking for the perfect candidate for them as well. And then we only get paid when we're successful.
Mm. Well, it's a great model for really accelerating high performance. And I know that there's a number of coaches. Marshall Goldsmith is pretty well known around the globe as a professional coach working at the senior C-suite, president of Ford and people like that he coaches. Again, same thing. He only gets paid when they get paid. And certainly that's a process that I have dipped into, and we'll be looking at expanding next year when the book comes out, and there's a variety of new activities that are running alongside the book launch.
I love it. Congrats.
Yes, thank you. So one of the areas in particular that I thought would be a great way to leverage your wisdom is the topic of confidence. And I know from my own experience too, and I think I've probably interviewed, not as many as you probably, but 6,000, hired and interviewed 6,000 people in my career. When it comes to confidence and interviews in particular, it's one of those areas, the two things usually don't go hand in hand. One of the scariest moments, other than doing a presentation, very often for people is feeling confident in interview situations. So any particular words that you've seen, experienced, help women in particular going into interview situations to show up confidently?
To show up confidently. Well, I think all people have a hard time promoting oneself. They really do have a difficult time. So it's also up to the interviewer to help them with that. We know that especially really great candidates that have been somewhere for a really long time have a very difficult time with that first interview process. So it's up to the recruiter, I think. There's a lot of onus on us to make sure that we're asking the right questions to really find out what role they played in whatever capacity, whatever question we're asking. We want to know what role was played, what were the measured results, and really pull out some of that information. And the way I actually interview, I will help them reframe their answer for the next time. Again, because it's not always easy to promote themselves. And if we can absolutely pull out who was accountable for whatever task that was or whatever that measured result was, I'll help them reframe that. So an example would be maybe someone says, let's say a candidate said to me, yeah, the team did a really great job. We outperformed all the previous teams by whatever percentage. And then when I start asking all the questions about, did they lead the team? Were they instrumental in being part of that success? What part of that success was the success? What did that actually mean? And then we'll pull out some of those pieces, and then I'll say to them, there might be an opportunity for you to say, I led a team of 6 that did not have previous experience. So there's a great word, I led, or I was responsible for, I was accountable for. What other thing? Ones to stay away from would be anything that is negative about a previous employer. I would never suggest to ever go there. In fact, we recommend 6 seconds or less to turn that around. Because obviously there will be times where it didn't end well, and it's up to us as a candidate we as a candidate to ensure that we're in control of that answer and we're in control of the next question. And skilled candidates can do it. It's just really difficult to do. So again, stay away from anything negative. Stay away from however, blaming of anybody else. Always find a way to present all of your answers in the most positive way. There's always, no matter what the negative situation might have been, there's always going to be a positive, and that must be rehearsed over and over and over again before they get in front of an interviewer.
Yeah. And I love the fact that you are talking about powerful language, which is showing that the individual is taking responsibility. They're not merely participating. They are actually taking a senior role in a project. So there's definitely going to be some words in the book that talk about using but, using words like however, also dipping into more confident language, more powerful language, so it's more succinct. And also blaming. I'm so glad that you brought that up, because it's very, very easy to step into, particularly with a previous employer. I mean, it's always a two-way street, it's a dance.
Yeah.
That something may have happened, and through that event, there's been an amazing learning that comes out of it. So how do you showcase the fact that it wasn't that something bad happened, it was how you handled it as a potential employee that actually has retained a positive relationship or given you a growth opportunity to take something away from that experience.
Exactly. Yeah.
Lovely. As far as words that wreck our confidence, I'm interested as well, not just in the ones that elevate our confidence as women, but things that perhaps you've seen, experienced through interviews with potential clients. What are some of the words that knock people's confidence?
In an interview?
Not necessarily in an interview. I mean, I know that you're active in, you're actually active in Rotary. You have one of the better known programs there that you participate in. So I know you have a wealth of experience across a number of different genres to bring to the conversation.
That's a good question. I think when I'm in process, like everyone, I'm far from enlightened in this subject. I will say that some of the mentoring I've done over the years is usually with someone, first of all, who's ready to be mentored, is open, because I'm not there to educate or train anyone. When the questions are asked or there's advice that they're looking for, I will do it in a way that will hopefully highlight all their greatest skills. So I will, as an example, I was hanging out with a couple of the kids that we mentor through Rotary a couple weeks ago, and we were looking for clothes for Christmas, and well, for them, not for Christmas, but for life anyway. And they were really very discouraged about how they looked. They referred to themselves as being overweight. All of these things that unfortunately take away from who they are. And what I said was, beauty is in all ways. And again, this is just in this example, but no matter what it is, trying to find something really positive about who that is really beating themselves up, and help them reframe about all the really good things that they are and what they can be. And with the positive words of intention, I believe that more positive will come. And I do notice over the years, I've noticed that they do become more confident, and they understand the language to use that lifts them up instead of brings them down. And I think when we do that in all things that we do, not just mentoring kids or mentoring others, but do it for our own self, to be more gentle with ourselves, and really take self-care and be cautious of what's coming out of our mouth, and just slow down a little bit and just think about how to stay positive in all ways.
Mm-hmm. And I love the fact that you're talking about reframing, which is so powerful. And I think the key thing is recognizing when we're actually doing it and being able to step into that reframe. And I know a lot of times when people are in deep learning mode, they've got an elastic band around their wrist, and every time that they fall into that trap, they can ping themselves to get themselves back. Any particular tips around reframing when you're coaching applicants that are going for interviews in particular? I would think that would be quite handy to understand, how do you do it in the moment?
I usually let them give the full story. I'll ask the question, leave it wide open, like a BDI question or something, so that they can go have a really big story around it. And anything that I feel could be perceived negatively, I wait till the story is done, and then I will go back to them and say, this is what I heard, is this what you meant? And we start there. And of course, in most cases, that's not what they meant. They were just in the mode of storytelling, but they were not in the frame of mind to really listen to the words that they were choosing for their answer. So as soon as they understood that, it's a whole lot easier then to say, okay, how can we reframe? Let's break that down. What did you really mean first? And then how can we answer that question most effectively in a positive way and still be completely truthful and transparent and just say it in a different way, in a positive way.
Yeah, and those are two great questions, I think, for anyone to keep in mind, because when we want other people to do something differently, we have to do something differently ourselves first, right? We have to lead the way. So that phrase of, what I heard you say was ... and what I think you meant was ... Those are two great questions to clarify, to make sure that as women, we're not jumping to a conclusion that is incorrect, and that we really are honoring what the person is trying to say, and perhaps hasn't come out exactly the way they wanted it to the first time. So it's about building a powerful conversation through those collaborative connection points of, I hear you, I understand you, and now I'm choosing to respond with my particular answer, my approach. Great questions, yeah. And I think rehearsing as well is an important part. I was on another interview last week, and we were talking about how very often particularly in the C-suite, women are not necessarily heard for their ideas. And a woman will bring an idea forward, and then 2 seconds later, a man brings the same idea forward, and everyone jumps on it. It's like, oh yeah, what a great idea. And it's like, wait a minute here. Yvonne actually introduced that idea a few minutes ago. And the rehearsal piece, I think, is so important still for women if we're going into a very strategic meeting, to make sure that we've really done as much prepping and homework as possible, trying to anticipate what those questions might be, what the objections might be, if it's a sales type situation that might come up, and rehearsing, how do I really get my point across in a way that is going to be invited in. So they're not being sold to, they're being given an invitation to engage with this idea, and what questions can I pose. So rehearsal, so important, not just in interviews, but in life.
It's so true. We tell them, we as a practice as well, we will always set an intention for the event. Yep. And whoever's going to be in that meeting, we collaborate in advance. We talk about what we want for preferred outcome, what are all potential, like you said, all the potential consequences. We try to think about all the role playing and all the different possibilities that can happen in that meeting, with still the preferred outcome as the center point.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing is about, and I talk about it in the book, is understanding how we're being measured. And you talked earlier on about bringing forward specific ways of identifying accomplishments by showcasing results. And here's what we set out to do, and here was the outcome. Here were the measurable specific results, whether it's statistics or some sort of quantifiable outcome. Mm-hmm. And that is something that I certainly guide clients with that concept when they're first stepping into a new job, is have that conversation with your new employer. In order for this to be a successful relationship on both sides, how will this be measured as a success at the end of my first 2 months, or my first month, my first 3 months? Mm-hmm. What are some of the measures of success going to be, so that it's not just the actual result, it's how they did it, which very often flavors whether the result is seen as positive and the relationship will continue past that first 3 months.
Agreed.
Yeah. And if we don't know as women, then very often that's where we open ourselves up to get blindsided, because we're not clear on how we're being measured and what the results are that are anticipated or desired. Yeah.
One of the questions we like to ask whenever I'm being interviewed or whatever, that I try to coach our candidates when they're going in for an interview, and we ask them to ask in that interview at the very end, well, close to the end, what does success look like in the next 3 months for this position, and what will be some of the expectations to get there.
Yeah.
So that certainly, a lot of those questions are never asked in interviews, but it really makes the employer or the hiring manager really think about, what will this person be doing in the first 3 months? Lots of times they don't know. It's really interesting. Yeah.
Well, I do a lot of work, as you know, with women entrepreneurs. And one of the things I find frequently is they've left it till the last minute to make the hiring decision. And finally, they've said, I can't do this anymore, throw the hands up in horror. And it's almost like a dump and run. Delegation style. They're so excited to have someone on board. They just sort of shove everything at them versus going through a more thorough onboarding process, which will obviously set them both up for successful outcomes.
So true.
But that is a great question to have as a candidate too, to just check in and see, where is this potential employer at? Have they thought through, what is my onboarding process going to look like? Values is something that I've always been a strong proponent of, finding a match between the candidate's values and the values of the manager for that department, and also for the organization, to make sure that there's some correlation there. And that's another question I very often will make sure is clear. You know, here are my values and here's how that looks in our organization or in my team. Here's how that would show up, and just having that check-in as well.
Love it.
So I'm excited that the book is coming out, certainly from the perspective, not just of interviewing, but as you have built this amazing connections database. I don't know what the number is up to now, but I remember hearing it was in the thousands several years ago. So how does that connect, do you think, to powerful language for women when we're building connection?
How does the amount of connections connect to that? What do you mean? Sorry, do you mind asking that again?
Sure. In terms of our language around confidence, how does that connect, do you think, to being able to build strong relationships? Maybe change the question a little bit there. But
yeah, that's great. Thank you. I think with practice, it gets easier and easier. And when we start with the pure intention of actually caring about the person that we're speaking to in a genuine way, of course, humans can feel that. And as soon as they know that you really do care for them and their well-being, and in my world, it extends to their family and their well-being. Yeah. So for me, I see it as an integrated approach to be available to serve and support those around us. And when we connect at a deep level, which can be done very quickly because of that pure intention, you have a new friend instantly. It really is within minutes, and you can reach out to them at any point to serve and support them, or vice versa. You need advice or referrals or whatever from them as well. But you have a new friend instantly, and that does give. The more practice you have doing that, the more confidence you will have in knowing that there's such a small percentage of people that do not respond to it, and it's only because of where they are in their life. The majority of people absolutely love connecting in a deep way.
Yeah. Well, it certainly helps with our confidence level when we know that we have the resources to fall back on when we're not necessarily feeling 100% confident about something. And one of those resources, obviously, is our connections, our friends, our colleagues, our professional colleague pool, as well as, obviously having the resources, whether it's financial or other, but connections and friends, colleagues to draw from is so important. And I really want to honor and thank you for the fact that you've shared between Christmas and New Year's, taken some time away to share some of your insights. I'm wondering if there's anything in particular that you have coming up that you would like to share, if there's any sort of offer or anything events coming up that you'd like to share, or invite any of the listeners that want to get involved and get to know you a little bit more. Anything coming up that you'd like to share?
Thank you, Yvonne. So there's a free download of our previous bestseller on our homepage at catherinebrownlee.com for anybody that is interested in getting a job of their dreams. And it was 2007, so there's some relevant content in there that we've pulled out, and we've moved into a new book that is now available also on the website. And that is done. It's ready to go, and it's through Pages in Kensington, the Owl's Nest in Britannia, and Shelf Life on 4th Street Southwest. So it's at all three of those locations. And again, it's also available online. And the second book is called Cat's Tips on How to Get the Job of Your Dreams Anywhere in the World. So we've pulled out the relevant content, we've added the social media pieces and networking and all the things that we've touched upon a little bit today. We go into a lot of detail on how to get that done, and then how to build out your database, which of course relates to the confidence factor. Yeah. And then the gathering is January 26th, Friday, January 26th at Paper Street on 8th Avenue. I think it's 630 8th Avenue Southwest, from 4:30 till 7:30, 8 o'clock, and everyone is welcome. There's no cover charge. Bring lots of business cards and connect in a deep way.
Yeah, and the gathering is all about networking, isn't it?
It's all about networking.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you very much for your generous offer. So catherinebrownlee.com is where people can find the link to the free ebook. Yes. And January 26th on the Friday, that's an open invitation. So thank you so much for sharing. Any last words before we close this down?
Well, thank you, Yvonne, and congratulations on the launch of your book. I look forward to promoting it.
Thank you so much, and I look forward to including, with your permission, some of your comments. We're not quite at the final edit stage where we can include a few more quotes, and certainly, do I have your permission to air this video as part of the launch as well?
Absolutely.
Lovely. Well, have a great new year. Thank you so much for sharing, and I look forward to connecting in the new year with you.
I do as well. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thanks, Catherine.
Bye-bye. Bye.